Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Happy Thursday. Happy almost Veterans Day. If any of you are veterans or have veterans in your family, we thank them for their service. And I'm really glad to be here with you. I'm currently, we actually just landed in Syracuse. I have a regional conference with one of our chapters in one of our regions. If you're familiar with NSBE, we're broken up into 6 regions across the US and internationally. And so all the members of the Region 1 chapters are here this weekend for a conference, and all of these lead into our big national conference. But I'm going to talk about NSBE a little bit further down the road. I love talking to marketing people. I'm an engineer by trade, but I'm a marketer in my head because I have really great ideas. I've come up with really great slogans in my head. So yeah, I should just be a marketer in my head. And when I tell you why, maybe you'll let me in your club, because y'all are the cool people. I'm glad for my chief of staff, that's the exec warrior that you see there. And also my director of marketing, Bridget, is on this call too. So as Sean mentioned, I'm from Jersey. I went to A&T where I studied mechanical engineering. And then I got an MBA from Fairleigh Dickinson. I spent probably 18 years of my career at GE, all of it in the healthcare medical device space. And half of that time was spent abroad. I did a lot of research in emerging markets. And then the work that my team and I did was to patent ultrasound. We did a reverse engineering on ultrasound and made it handheld. And we designed a product called the vScan. And there's a lot of marketing stories around that. But we designed vScan, and we thought, under the leadership of our then chairman, Jeff Immelt, who I worked for quite a while, this was going to be the stethoscope of the future. But then we didn't have a great marketing plan around it, and it didn't become that. And so we took the product overseas and did some amazing things with it. And then I returned to the US, led women in tech for a while for GE at the Global Research Center, went to Wiki and ran Wiki through a really, really difficult season of social justice and disinformation with the Trump administration. And then I came back to NSBE, where I'm a lifetime member and am the first CEO and the first woman to lead the organization in this way. And came to lead us into our 50th anniversary to help grow this ecosystem and to really position us in an even greater way. So when we were talking with Sean, and as I was looking more into performance marketing, which I know about through Sean, and then studying some of what you all do, I thought that I could talk a little bit about the juxtaposition between tech and marketing. And then because this is a community that clearly has a commitment to diversity and equity, because it's called Blacks in Performance Marketing, but there are people of all races here. So I'm going to assume that you all have a passion and a commitment around equity in the space. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the power of what it means to build diverse teams, and then just the power that you all have as marketers in this space, and how, you know, the world needs you all to show up in a very different way. And what the power of marketing can do in this space. When I'm not sitting on the board of Mercy Ships, when I'm not serving on formerly the board of Wikipedia and the Equity Committee, when I'm not leading NSBE, I also serve on President Biden's White House Committee for HBCUs. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention to you all that we are in the midst of a huge campaign to eradicate student loan debt. So if you, your children, your cousins, your aunts, your nieces, your godchildren, people you like, people you don't like, anyone that you know is tied up in student loan debt, there is an opportunity, and a one-time opportunity with a December deadline. You should go to studentdebtrelief.gov. And it's a very, very simple application that you can complete on your phone. You basically have an opportunity to have a certain amount of debt relieved by the government. It's a one-time opportunity. And I'm going to presume that none of you all are eligible because, of course, if you make more than $125,000 as a single person or $250 in a household, you're not eligible for this relief. But I bet you know someone that is. Getting out of debt is going to be key to the freedom of Black people and communities that have been overlooked. I don't call them underserved, I call them underlooked communities. And so you should share that information. So now I'll start into kind of a little bit around the interconnectedness between engineering and marketing. One of the first things that I had a chance to do as an engineer, well, the first big thing was to solve a problem around what it meant to deliver healthcare to communities of people that didn't have the right or the ability to advocate for themselves and get quality healthcare. And so as an engineer, we went to work designing the golden widget to solve this problem. What we didn't do was connect with marketing teams or people that knew how to take what we were doing, add a story to it, and then sell it or share it to a community that really needed to know what the product could do so that they could come and receive it. So we were thinking, this is how we solve the problem. Marketers think this is how we sell a solution and get people engaged, right? So we created this huge project, did this great product, took it into the world, and then no one used it until we called on our marketing friends. Our marketing friends connected us with the chiefs and villages and the World Health Organization and the United Nations and all of these different people. And they had us write white papers and do media and get on television, and they put it on the website and they branded it and made it look exactly the way it needed to be so that people and women would know that their lives would be changed if they used this product, so that ministers of health in emerging markets would know that they would be able to deliver safe mothers and babies back into communities. And that is the power of marketing, testifying on Capitol Hill to say, this product needs to be recognized as an item on the safe surgical checklist so that people all around the world can have their lives changed. And if a marketing team hadn't decided to link the story and the interconnectedness, we would have never really been able to have the impact we have. And there are about 5 iterations of the project that I was a part of designing more than probably 14 years ago. I say that because the other part that I think about when I think about marketing teams is not just the story that we tell, but who tells the story. And when I was at Wikipedia, I understood the huge gap between what it meant to tell a story, which is exactly what the platform of Wikipedia does. It tells story after story after story. But who tells the story really matters, and then what you use with the power of your voice. Less than 1% of the people that share on the Wikipedia platform identify as Black. Less than 18% of them identify as women. And so you have billions and billions of content on the largest website of information in the entire global world. So that means you have people that are mostly white, mostly men, mostly American, mostly European, telling stories about Indians, Asians, Africans, Blacks, Americans, women's, animals, whatever you want to say. Every story or every piece of content or information being designed from one single perspective. And so even though the mission of Wikipedia is that anyone in the world that wants to be a part of the open source, open information movement can join, it's really not true, because the platform is driven by a community that holds the greatest power when it comes to knowledge and information. The reason that's so important is because the world doesn't look like the people that are actually writing and designing Wikipedia. Just like the world of marketing doesn't look like the people that I see on this call. It's highly, highly integrated by white, highly middle to upper middle class people that deliver marketing strategies on a daily basis. How can those people tell the stories, sell the products, build the platforms, do the marketing, draw in the people that are the consumers, the users, the people in need, the people that are spending, if they're not a part of that movement? And so when I was at Wikipedia, even though my role was the chief operating officer and I was hired to build operational strategy, to build outcomes and key results like the OKRs for the organization, and basically run the company that ran Wikipedia, Trump ran for president again, and we're not here to talk politics. I'm just laying some groundwork here. So there was an incredible disinformation movement that happened, and anything that happens in the world happens on Wikipedia. It's the most powerful news source in the world. If it happens on Wikipedia, you're seeing it on Wikidata. You're hearing it on Alexa, Siri, everywhere you go. That information all comes from Wikipedia. When you Google things, everything comes from the database of Wikipedia. So you're using it whether you use it directly or indirectly. So we had disinformation and battling accuracy in the election. We had everything that happened in the world to Black people, everything that happened in the world to women. We had fights on how we would tell those stories. And if the makeup of Wikipedia from a marketing perspective looks like what I explained to you, you could imagine that the amount of time that it took, weeks upon months, for me to have to fight to change the perception that the story of George Floyd was that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time and was killed, when what he was actually murdered. But to change that on a platform requires a heavy marketing that exists even outside of Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is a tertiary source. So news and marketing that happens in the world then happens on Wikipedia. But because the world maybe didn't look like Matt or Sean or people that I see on this screen telling stories about George Floyd, using words like murder or pushing for marketing to say things like that, it wasn't showing up on Wikipedia in that way. And so there was an injustice and a lack of equity that had to be reversed even on that platform. The Black Lives Matter page on Wikipedia was another example. And the reason that's so important is because who tells your story matters. And so we tested the model. We had a white woman PhD who actually is a friend of mine, Dr. Jess. She's in the United Kingdom. She's a physicist. She decided to write one story a day about a woman in technology. She said, I'm going to do it for 1 year straight and see if it changes the model of how Wikipedia works. If I do this once a day, will it change the way we drive marketing and performance on the platform? 3 years later, she's been doing it every day, and it has changed the way that women are presented on the platform. And so it's a proof point that if you have an authoritative muscle on a marketing platform, you actually can change the way that stories are told, the way that media is presented, the way that consumers receive information, and the way that people will experience opportunities. And so I'm sharing that because, remember, I'm only a marketer in my head. And so all I can do is share with you experiences that I've had that I hope you'll use to then use your voice and your power and your authority to really change the way that the world receives information, the way that you use your keyboard for good, and the way that you make a commitment to change stories. I came to NSBE because we have a community of people that are made up of hundreds of thousands of people. More than 15,000 of them are students, 700 chapters across the US, in Africa. And we're the largest ecosystem of Black tech talent and thought leadership. We're going to be 50 years old in 2 years. And maybe some of you have never even heard of NSBE. But NSBE has marketed itself as an engineering society. What I am shifting our perspective to be is that we are STEM and a tech organization. That matters because people aren't funding engineering societies. People are funding the continuum of STEM and putting Black people into STEM. And so the way that we change the way that we're perceived and the way that we change the stories that we're telling are going to be key in the market, so that we can then change the way that we're received, so that we can just continue to ensure that we have a longer run rate in this market space. The way that people see NSBE are students, a big convention, and hiring. And all those things are important. We will be in March. I hope some of you will come to our national convention in Kansas City. There'll be 11,000 Black STEM students and leaders there. It's an incredible thing to watch as they're flying drones and solving problems and doing the world's tough work under the auspice of some incredible brilliance. But what we really have to do first is rebrand who we are to match the story we're trying to build. And so we're currently doing a refresh of our website. We're rebranding our imagery. We're working on a new logo, because while Afrotech may not be a direct competitor, they're giving us a run for our money. They're bringing a sleekness and a sexiness to tech that we don't bring, forthright, maybe except for myself. I don't know. You should be on mute, Sean. But we have to shake up the STEM world and show them not just who we are right now, but who we are building ourselves to be. We currently have one of the largest run rates for people in STEM. We start from third grade. We have our summer engineering program where we have thousands of students that are doing great work in engineering. They take these 3-week programs. We're teaching them about equity and fairness and the righteousness of what it means to design and build for people that are different than you. And then when you get into high school, just like you were a Girl Scout or a Cub Scout, you can join a NSBE Junior chapter and you're learning about STEM. We're working in a policy space. For those of you that don't know, there are things like the California math policy. California is trying to take subjects like calculus out of adjudicated communities like Oakland, because they say Black people don't take calculus. Well, I mean, I took it and I'm Black, so some people take it. And what we know is that if you don't take it, you'll never get to study engineering. And so removing it from those school systems is intentional. It's an intentional way to keep Black people or any people of color from studying courses like engineering, physics, any type of STEM project. So we have to put our foot into the policy world and advocate in that way. We're building who we are on the college campuses, who we are when we graduate. There are NSBE leaders that are running organizations, chancellors of universities, CEOs of corporations. And so our brand needs to reflect that. And so we hired a director of marketing. She's actually on this call now, Bridget. Bridget's an Emmy award-winning marketer, and she's taking our organization through this transformation and showing us who we need to be so that we can even become visible to companies and people like yourself. So that when you're thinking about what are the things that you're marketing that actually sell, how are you drawing people to the sites that you're promoting and sponsoring? How can NSBE even be a part of that? How can we be a part of what helps you grow and position yourself in the marketplace differently? Whether you're working in education, in tech, you could be selling water. There's a STEM component to it. And so we're working through that right now because we understand the power of slogans. We now understand the power of slogans, the power of marketing, the power of diverse teams. And so if I could charge this group kind of with anything, it is that based on my global experiences and the things that I've done in my career, I hope that as leaders in the space that you're in, that you'll be unafraid, that you'll be resilient, and that you'll leverage your position as marketers to be game changers in not just in the marketing space, but in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because there's a way that things are said, and there's a way that you can say them that will change the course of the way products are sold, that will change the way that people experience solutions and products. I was with the chief marketing officer for Procter & Gamble last week, maybe 2 weeks ago at Goldman Sachs. And he was talking about the campaign that they ran. And I don't know if any of you have seen the television campaign that they've run called Change the Script, where they're telling the stories on this commercial where you'll see these 4 Black kids and they're in a bodega. And they're all standing there and they're trying to buy things, but the music is a little ominous and they're opening the frozen counter to grab something, and an older woman walks in and they're all looking at each other, and one of them nods to the other person and they open the refrigerator to grab a Gatorade or something. And then the woman drops something and all of the kids run to help pick up her items and they're like, "Ma'am, are you okay? I'm sorry, do you need any help?" And the whole point of it is to change the narrative, because certainly anyone that's watching that happen was thinking that possibly something negative was going to happen, because there are 4 Black boys, they're in this store, and this woman walks in. So they do a series of these commercials where they're trying to tell a story to change the narrative, or to change people's vision and perspective of Black men. It's a valiant effort that this guy, who is an older white male, he talks about the team that he created to build this, and how he didn't have any input in it whatsoever, except that they had an unlimited budget to make it happen. And if you don't know it, you guys should check out the Procter & Gamble website and this Change the Narrative, because it's a great way that they used their marketing muscle, their lack of fear, and put their reputation on the line to say that no matter what, we'll do our part to try and change the narrative. One of the other questions he asked me was, Janeen, what else do you think we can do to help in storytelling or in changing the perspective? And I said, well, hire Black people. And he said, well, how do I do that? I was like, you just hire Black people. That's what you do. And he's like, how? I'm like, well, you put an ad out, and then a Black person applies for it, and then you make them an offer, and then you hire them. And isn't that how you hire all people? And I said it in that way because it's a frustrating question to answer, because it almost gives off the perception that, I don't know, that we just don't get jobs the same way other people get jobs. And so I say that because I want you all to hire people of color. I want you to hire Black people. I want you to give them great jobs. I want you to give them an opportunity to create great advertisements, and to build great websites, and to do brand refreshes, and all of the things that are going to change the way that we're experienced. Because who's on your team, the stories we tell, the influence that we have, all makes a difference. And so I just want to leave you with a couple of NSBE stats, and then maybe we could just answer some questions and I can talk about things or give you some of my marketing ideas, because they're pretty good. NSBE is what I would call like the original Black tech startup. We started in 1975 with 6 Black men at Purdue University, 4 of whom are still alive today. They started NSBE to create a tribe and a community of Black people, because they were studying a really, really hard curriculum. They were the only Black people at Purdue, which is a predominantly white institute. And they needed a community. They needed people to support them. They needed help getting through the classes, study partners. They needed to feel welcome. They needed to fight for loans and funding. All the reasons we still exist for today, unfortunately. 50 years later, we're still in business for the same reason. And but we now are the largest student-run organization. As I mentioned, we have the largest national convention where we gather students and leaders in STEM. The 3rd week in March in 2023 will be in Kansas City. I would love to tell you more about it. Maybe you'll come and walk the floor and join us and have a chance to experience it. You can get the Black STEM experience and in full effect. And I'll just remind you that, there's a great call to action, and the marketing world has so much power and so much influence. And what you do with it is what matters, because our world needs strong, consistent, bold, courageous, integrity-infused leaders. And if you are any of those things, then the world needs you to show up and use the power that you have in marketing to change what's happening in our culture, and to help people understand who we are, what we need, how we should be valued, respected, and the impact that we have when we're let loose into something. And so that's kind of where I'd like to pause. I have stories, both good and bad, that I could share for a very long time, but I wonder if maybe there might be some questions. I hope that maybe some of it has resonated. And if it hasn't, then you don't have to invite me back. But
Janeen, thank you so very much for telling us just a small portion of your story. There's a couple of things that, of course, resonated with me and that I want to just kind of put it out there, and then we can let others intertwine as well. First and foremost, again, I feel like, we've also had very humble beginnings being Blacks in performance marketing, going through a name change as of a few months ago, building out the site, getting a little bit more recognition across the board as we sit back and try to do our best to empower an industry that reaches so many people of color, but yet have the decision makers of that marketing be very few. By far, and what can we do to get more people, recruit more people into the particular space? So very kind of similar beginnings, and our goal here is to continue to grow. So maybe one day we can also say that we're 50 years in, in making and across the board, and the majority of us who are on this call were part of the, again, how it started. Part of our website, what we're trying to build out is more of a career, almost job posting area. Because again, if we're looking to recruit and promote and get people hired within positions, guess what? Most people hire those individuals who are within their own circle or perhaps look like them. Well, we already know the decision makers are not, the majority of them by far are not African American. So our goal here is to, have this posting on our site. What could we do potentially to maybe connect with NSBE to sit back and have it where individuals who graduate from NSBE in regards to the undergraduate level who are now looking for positions within tech? Because because right now I know that I definitely believe that we don't have any Blacks within tech within this industry. What could we do to sit back and rather connect with you guys?
So that's a great question, Sean, when you're talking about particularly around being able to recruit. We actually have a career center. And I do want to say this, there are so many engineers that then pivot and become business leaders like myself, lead technical teams, lead marketing teams, become attorneys. Engineering is, in my opinion, just a very strong base foundation in education for any other area you may want to go in. Engineers are very, we can be as rigid on one hand, but we're also quite creative, right-minded people as well. But our career center is a very strong tool on our website. And so the way that the career center works is that a membership fee is paid, and then you have access to thousands of resumes that are posted on our website. And so our community includes both students and graduates, because anyone that's a member of NSBE can put their resume on our website. And that's one of the main tools that a lot of our other corporate partners actually use. So there's two ways. There's one, if you're looking for marketers from a tech background, if our career center is a great place to start. The second place is, I really think that you all experiencing convention is a great way to do that. Even if you experience it as a group, BIPM together, maybe not independently in your companies, maybe that is the way. But if you were to come as a group, if you were to, whether you wanted to recruit on the convention floor from a boothing perspective or experience it in another way, have a workshop, talk to our community about marketing in tech. Both of those are really solid ways, because that's where you're going to have the eyes and the ears. And it's both an informational, educational platform as much as it is a way to recruit and to engage people that want to be a part of that space.
I will vouch for a lot of our engineers and how they think. Probably about 3 or 4 of my very best friends are all, again, graduates or lifetime members of NSBE by far. And again, the way they think is a little differently. And what they did was they took it from engineering to become, in essence, what Deli was the CIO of Prudential
insurance firm.
Insurance firm. We have it where Peter is one of my lawyers by far. So engineers just think a little bit differently, which I've always enjoyed.
NSBE was definitely, it changed my life. When I was
Where were you in school?
I went to Western Michigan, Region 4. And so when I was out there, I joined the regional board, and a lot of my friends from Delano to Mike Muse, I'm seeing their photos out here.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these people, but it really changed my life. I wasn't in a fraternity, but NSBE, on the regional board, planning the national convention, whatever year that was, 15 months of traveling. When I went to the national convention the first time, being around 10,000 Blacks, it was literally an experience that it introduced me to entrepreneurship and everything that I am today, it was inspired from like those 4 years of college and being a part of it. But it was literally, it was a great experience that I had. So, yeah.
I was, I was Region 2 chair, and then I served on the national CPC. And then, all these years later, to be able to come back and do that. Don't worry, I will send you a link for lifetime membership.
Okay.
So we need you back, especially at 50. We're going to do, this is a marketing dream. We need to do a lot of storytelling and just talk about what has happened to those that have come through the NSBE ecosystem and who we've become. And so that's something that we're thinking through and we're working on now. And so, it's not for naught. And it's really good to know that NSBE had that influence on you. And, if there's anything that you can think of that we should probably answer, or that I might want to speak to as a result, just let me know. But I'm about to send you this link for real because never mind. Camille already sent it to you.
Already in there. Let me go to a little bit deeper subject matter that you brought up, Janeen, which was what was happening in California in regards to them changing the curriculum within certain communities. And
Right.
guys, again, when she first told me about this, I was kind of struck, saying, wow, you're talking about the fact of, again, something that would further hold back individual minorities from being able to really even excel. When we hear about these stories of, again, we think about NASA, to find out that there were 3 or 4 African-American women who were never told, the story was never told, but if it was not for them, we would have never landed on the moon.
I'll tell the story.
But what happens here is that if those young ladies were from Oakland, California, again, and they guess what? They would never have had the opportunity to do so. And that right there is limiting, something that we need to always be aware of. And again, sometimes we do that within, we see it within our industry where we don't afford people an opportunity to attend conferences, to understand that there's another world. And I think part of what we want to do and what we want to achieve is the fact is having it where we know the world that we live in professionally. What can we do to kind of merge or bring over the world that we live in, again, personally, so that there's a little bit more overlap by far, and so that there's a better influence. And so if somebody ever came up with that idea of, well, we want to limit the education within these minority areas, that we would say, people would look at them and say, what are you thinking? Absolutely not. We want to double down opposed to lighten up and limit what they can achieve for the rest of their lives.
I think it's important to understand that engineering is what I'm educated and trained to do, and social justice is my fire, for real. And every time I try and say, like, no, it's not about color and it's not about gender, the world just proves me wrong every time. They're like, no, it really is. And things like the California math law, this is just one of many things that are happening in the world today. These things are very deliberate, and they're set up to create barriers. It's the beginning barrier, because the education is going to lead to wealth, which is going to lead to freedom. And there is a deliberate movement in the world to keep Black people from being free, straight up. And it starts with us being shackled to debt. And so when you go to college, you can go to college, you can raise your children in a two-parent home, work full time, spending less. None of those things make it possible for us to get out of debt, period. If you're Black, you can go to college, you can get married, raise 2 children, you can work full time, save all your money and spend less, and you still won't be able to close a debt, that gap of wealth, because we don't have ancestral wealth. When white people die, they deliver wealth to the generations behind them. When Black people die, we just leave debt, right? I mean, all of us have had to pay for something in some funeral, if you're Black and have had someone close to you die. And so when it sounds ridiculous to say, what does that have to do with math in Oakland or in Newark or in Jersey City or in Compton? But it does have something to do with that. Because if we don't take these classes, then we won't even have that leg up. If we don't get out of school without debt, we have a 10-year gap between the person next to us. Me, my niece is just finishing off her student loan debt. She's in her 40s. I didn't have debt when I went to college. It means I bought my first house in my 20s, bought my second house in my 20s, bought my third house in my 30s. There's a different level of wealth. I took an international role for a multinational company, which meant that I had more than 6 years of wealth accumulation because I didn't have to spend my salary, which means I gained a level of wealth that was very different. But all of that had to do with me being an engineer. And I think that we have been playing games with the fact that there is a tug on society. There's a tug on women. There's a tug on Black people. The ability for us to make STEM relevant, to make it cool. We're losing out on social media. Young people don't want to be engineers anymore. They think it's nerdy. They think it's only about getting the bag, but they don't have to actually have a knowledge or an understanding of it. All of these things tie directly to what it means to be Black, to be one of the largest consumers of technology, but the smallest group that's actually delivering to solve the problems. We graduate technologists at more than 23%. We're only 9% of the tech workforce, 9%. We do not work in tech. And so because of that, we're not solving the world's toughest problems. And I'm doing my very best to make sure that our community is still a part of doing that. I think that when you dismantle us from an educational perspective, when you make it difficult for us to have products that serve our communities, and when you even do something like what you said, Sean, which is make it difficult for us to have leaders in marketing. I don't know how many CMOs or chief marketing officers are in major positions like Procter & Gamble and other places to be able to change the narrative and write stories and put it out there in the media like that. When that happens, then it means that our voice never fully gets told. And so I'm no longer at Wikipedia, and I don't know when they'll ever, or if they'll ever hire anyone that looks like me and put them in the top leadership again. And if they don't, that means that some of those stories may never get told in that same way. And that's deliberate and it's intentional. And some of it is just habitual. And we're not here to break down, years of slavery in a 1 hour call. I'm just saying, it's all interconnected.
I think that we're making an impact. This group in itself and the participants and members within it are here for a particular reason. And that is that we know that we need change. And it's change that's going to affect not just us, but those around us, how we market. And ultimately, the facts are proven that guess what? The companies that we represent will actually do that much better as by far. So the goal here is to be a better representation of exactly the people that we are serving. So I'm happy about that. Happy that, again, there are some decision makers that are on this call and that will be listening to this call after the fact. We've got individuals who are hosts of major, conferences that are here on this call as well, that have been making incredible strides to make sure that the representation at their conferences are, have a better representation overall. I think today what it gave us by having you here to present for us gave us an opportunity to see somewhat of the bigger picture from a different perspective by far. And again, that is that Black female high level perspective of somebody who went to an HBCU, who's been able to accomplish and lead the largest website in the world. And again, and what that meant. And then now being able to go back, in essence, to your grassroots to, in essence, be able to bring an organization that's been around for nearly 50 years to a higher height by far says a lot. By far. So one is to give back. One is that you can succeed on several different levels. And no matter what, better yet, when you are Black, that means the fact is that we can all win and we can all win together.
Janeen, thank you. This has just been amazing. I really have enjoyed listening to you, and I've been taking some notes. Now, I'm somebody who works with students, and so
God bless you.
So I'm immediately thinking about women in tech, right? And I know I have young women around me all the time as students who really enjoy technology, who love technology, and but there's some barriers there that cause them to not want to do it as a profession. What would you say in that space? Like, what would you say to a young woman who you can see that there's this passion for technology, and I see it all the time. Because I ask my students constantly, I say, how many of you are gamers? And I'm always surprised at how many young women are like, and they know so much about all the different technologies that are being used for gaming, even building gaming systems. And still, they won't think about going into that area as a profession.
You want to answer some of this? I was asking my chief of staff because this is her first role in tech. I was just looking at her to see how we should answer this. But I know a lot of gamers as well, and particularly around women, I think that the main barrier for women that want to be in tech. So she's asking about women that love tech, but they feel like there's a barrier or a reason why they're not going into it, and what should we say to them and what should they do? And so I think the first thing you have to explain to them is that, and you might not want to tell people in NSBE I said this, but you don't have to have a degree in tech to be in tech. What's your background? Economics, right? She's has an economics background. And so you don't have to have a degree in tech to be in the space. You do have to have a love for it, and you have to have a curiosity and a passion to want to learn and to do. I think that what happens is we put up a fear of something that doesn't look like us. So we don't see tech as being highly feminine. We see a lot of men in it. We also recognize, particularly if they're in a younger age group and they're focusing or they're spending time in Meta, in those spaces, they're very dangerous spaces for women. Some of the gaming spaces are very, very dangerous spaces for women in the metaverse and things like that. And those of you that are in the metaverse, it's a dangerous place, and you feel like I'm not protected there. So you're already not protected in the actual world that we live in, and then you go into this space and you're not protected there either. If you are designing games or codes for games, a lot of times you can, if you're in an open source space and you want to put your code in, if you identify as a woman, or if people can notice that you're a woman, they'll automatically kick you out or try to move around you. It's the stuff you'll know if you're in a coding space. And so I tell them that the number one thing that they need is resiliency, because they already have the smarts. I never question a woman's brilliance, but they have to be resilient. They have to be connected to the right person to help bring them and introduce them into a space. And then they should know that to be in tech doesn't always mean that you have to be an actual technologist or a coder or a programmer. And so there's a lot of different things that you can do in a tech space. So I'm going to ask Camille to come on camera and join for a second. Y'all can meet my chief of staff.
Hi, everyone. The last part is what I was going to add. I think that women, obviously, and I'm a little biased, bring a very high level of leadership in any role that they take on. So my advice would be they could even hone in on that. So to Janeen's point, you don't have to be in tech or, on the technical side of things to be in tech. So for me personally, I know I'm a great leader. I know I have great business skills of all capacities and all sorts. I come from a hospitality, revenue, and strategy background. As she mentioned, I majored in consumer economics, so non-tech related, but took those skills to work for a tech company. And then that way, that barrier of entry really isn't there. And what it does is it allows you the space, or it will allow the woman the space to excel in what they're good at while still exploring which direction they can hone in a little more specifically. So definitely don't be afraid to just be on the business side of things. I think that's very broad, but it also just allows you the opportunity to see which direction to really focus in on.
Thank you. Thank you both. I appreciate that.
I do want to make sure that everybody understands that I was thoroughly impressed when I talked to Jay about her position within the White House committee. And I know that we talked a little bit about NSBE and things of that nature. If you can, Janeen, if you could just wrap up with the fact of this, making sure that we further emphasize the importance thereof, because we understand, this is a big, big thing. Big thing. There's a lot of people who have been buried with debt by far. And no matter how you think and feel about it, it is a reality that they can actually be able to remove that portion. And I'm hoping that maybe the income and the finances that they had towards that will be put back into the economy in a different way. But Jay, if you could just kind of give the feedback on what your thoughts were there, and we can wrap it up from that point.
So I think the most important thing to understand is that this, there's a lot of things that we're working on with President Biden, and a lot of recommendations that we have for HBCUs, everything from safety on campus to refurbishing and replenishing these longstanding institutions. And there's just a long list of recommendations that we have due to him in May. But the student debt relief, it's estimated that 23 million people will have all of their student loan debt eradicated, and at least 20 million people will have some form of their debt reduced, which is why, even though this doesn't have to be approved by the Senate, it is being fought so hard. We are literally getting lawsuits to the White House now. Why? Because people don't want us free, which is what I just said about 10 minutes ago. So that's exactly why. So they are fighting this because any ability to create a sense of freedom in communities of color want to be overturned, which should really have us feeling great about ourselves, because folks are scared. They are afraid of what will happen if we do get into tech, if we do get these young women into space, if we do, do all of these things. To answer your question, Indala, there were two deadlines. The first one was October 31st. Anyone that worked in the public service space, that deadline is now passed. So if you're in public service, you have until October 31st to get a debt relief. And what that was doing was it was going to take, if you've been in public service for 10 years and you had worked in that space, then it was going to help to remove your loans, your debt. The second piece is actually going to take anyone that has had a loan, as long as you are under the barriers financially in terms of salary. It will remove a loan that's in default. It'll remove a loan that's being held by another bank. All of the loans get moved into the major bank that is owned by the US government, and then the US government pays off that loan. We're still paused on payments. And so it's important that you register on the website, because it will help count the number of payments that you've made. And so while in the beginning, the beta testing was slow to move, I guarantee you that it's working. The court order is meant to be a distraction, which is why we were telling everyone, please get it done by October 31st, even if you don't work for public service. Because at the time we knew this was happening, we just couldn't say it. And so we were like, even if you think you're not eligible, everybody get your application in, because we know what this is all about. And so you can still apply. We have some fighting that we have to do. We need to get past everything that's happening with the election, but this isn't going to go away. The Senate doesn't have to approve it, but they certainly can do everything that they can to slow it down. And it's critical, because it's one of the greatest ways that I have seen to freedom. I feel like, I was on Arlen's podcast, and I don't know if any of you know Arlen. She's big in the tech community, and she has a book out. I don't know if you know her name is Arlen Hamilton. Her podcast is My First Million, and she has a great podcast. You all should check her out. She was homeless at one point, and she then started a venture capital fund, and clearly has made several million. And I had the opportunity to be on her podcast, and she wanted to talk about how I had made my first million in a non-traditional way. And it was by not having college debt, taking a job overseas, becoming an expat, saving money, and kind of doing things in a more traditional way, but that way still works too. And it's why I think that the world is wanting to continue to block this. So I can't talk enough about trying to live a debt-free life, trying to make your money on this business side, and then finding a way to create wealth and space for other people like you. Thank
Thank
y'all for
you,
having
Stacey.
me. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and a safe holiday season. Wishing you all a great end of the year. Take care,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.